just got to say, Sam's obviously out with a concussion. Have you come up with a replacement yet?
We have, but we haven't finished match committee, so yeah, I won't give that one just yet. We've got a. So Brownie went off, didn't finish the session today. The Achilles is getting a little sore again. A little bit concerning for us, so we're going to have a bit of a chat through that before we make some final decisions. He's really important to our back line, and we don't want to risk that becoming something larger where we may miss him for more than a month or so. So we'll make some decisions around that before we finalise who's in and out.
I was going to ask you about Lukey, obviously went off a bit early. Will that decision be made Saturday morning or tomorrow?
That'll be in the next couple of hours. So that'll be with Brownie and Scott Burns and myself. We sit down and just discuss what's better for the medium longer term for him and also for the footy club.
So 2 changes at once, depending on Brownie?
Yeah, we hope so. Off of a reasonable effort last week. Sam, we actually missed Sam in the second half. He was has played some really good footy over the last couple of weeks, been really clean with the ball in hand, so we'll miss him, as we do any player that goes out of the side, but that's one we'll have to make, and then we'll just see how Brownie goes and the decision we make there.
Dixie, what are your thoughts on fans grabbing the ball? Do you advise them to grab the ball when it comes towards them?
I'm not the expert on that side of the game, so I won't be making any comments or giving out any advice when it comes to that area. Basically, we're doing whatever we can to keep the game safe, to keep our supporters safe. We've now been in what's been a pretty tough time for everyone in society for about a year and a half. We understand what's needed when it comes to the possibility of playing footy, the flexibility we need to show. We're extremely grateful we've got the opportunity to play in our home state this weekend in front of a crowd, and we'll do everything that's needed for us to keep that safe and ensure we don't have the risk of any more spread of the virus.
And are you able to give any clarification over whether the nets might be kept up there?
Again, it's one I've seen comments around. I don't know, so I'm not going to be able to give you an answer. Wouldn't be a bad idea, I wouldn't have thought, considering that's where the ball goes over more often than not.
What do you have to do this, before or after the game, quarantine, jabs, whatever, tests, what do you have to do?
Yeah. Well, there's a little bit to it without going into too much of the detail. Even at the moment we're having COVID tests regularly to make sure that we're able to keep the virus out of the football club. But this week's an interesting one. Post-game is the most important after we've I guess had contact with the Collingwood Football Club that are coming from Melbourne. And with that we'll go into what is quarantine 48 hours as a football club. So we'll make sure anyone involved in our AFL program is quarantining, is staying away. Our SAMFL team will stay separate for the first 48 hours, so they won't train at our facility. They'll stay away. Our players will be able to go to our facility and do recovery on the Sunday and the Monday. But other than that, we won't be leaving our houses.
How does it work for blokes live with families or whatever? Are they separated from them, or?
They're not. My understanding is they're not at this point. It's the same as last year. This is the restrictions we went into for majority of last year, which is as a coach, I can give you my example. I won't leave the house to go anywhere. Shops, cafes. The only place I'll be is in the car to work, which is our facility at West Lakes, and then home. And that'll be the same for our players for the first 48 hours, or until at least we're advised by the authorities and SA Health that we can come out of those restrictions.
Collingwood have to be almost locked down for 60 odd hours before they come in. They can't get food, or that has to be delivered. Their families are in the same boat as well. I mean, how do you think that impacts a player psychologically? I mean, would you be worried if your players ever had to go through that?
Look, I think Collingwood are in the same, and I haven't spoken to Nathan as yet, but they're in the same position as we are, and they're open to be flexible because we'd like to play the games of football for a number of reasons. They're doing what they can to keep the community safe and play this game of football. Now, there's a fair bit involved in that. That's the challenge at the moment. And every side went through it last year. We all had our different challenges, from flying in and out on a day of game to being in a hub for over 100 days. That's where it sits at the moment. I hope we don't go back into that, but we seem like we're unfortunately on our way back there.
In terms of the game, is it a complete distraction that you do without, or is it just something you have to live with and you got to remind the players that you do have a game?
Yeah, from our point of view, it's not a distraction at all, because we've been flexible and ready to go to play however we have to play, week in, week out. It's now got to that point where we're quite privileged to be able to play the game of football at our home ground this week. Last week we played a game that was supposed to be played in Melbourne. We played that in Sydney. And that was a change of venue, but our guys are preparing to play wherever we have to play. We don't know after this week whether it will be Cairns. That's what the schedule says. We'll be prepared to play wherever we need to, again, to do the right thing, and it'll be basically decided for us where we're playing games of footy. So we had a fantastic training session today on Adelaide Oval, where our guys trained at probably the best they have for months. There's no distraction there. We'll be ready to play on the weekend.
Are you looking at doing anything different at half time, looking at the stats that you're on the team to not win a third quarter so far this year? Yeah, what can you do to address that?
That's a good stat, that one. We've been really disappointing in third quarters for whatever reason. We'll sit down with our playing group. We have our captain's run tomorrow, where we really get into the finer detail, and we'll have a discussion around why that is. Is it something we're doing at half time? Possibly. We're reasonably consistent with what we do at the half-time breaks, so maybe a change there, maybe needed. It might not be a player issue, it might be a coaching issue. It might be something I'm saying at half-time. We'll look into all of that. We'll look at how we come back out, at what time onto the ground. We've reviewed a lot of games, and when we look at the third quarters, it's not necessarily the fact that it's the third. We've done a lot of things wrong in those quarters that we know are part of our game plan, a part of our improvement or our ongoing development as a young side. But you're right, the numbers do stand out in that third quarter, and if it's one we can at least get back to maybe even, it might give us a couple more wins.
Yeah, how much of a disadvantage does that put you compared? I know it's one quarter and four, but yeah, I guess given any quarters, more quarters on it compared to others, dividends after half time, you might be coming out a bit cold.
I guess the one positive out of it, there's something there. There's something there, maybe us coming off a break at quarter time. We have a 20-minute break. We haven't been able to bounce back into the game fast enough, possibly. So from a coaching point of view, we've got something we can have a look at and try and change. And we'll do that this week, but again, it'll be both our coaching group and our playing group discussing what we think that is. Hopefully we find something small that we can tweak and we get a result.
Nick, have you tweaked your forward line at all? Collingwood's defence is stacked up. They can see. I think they're leading the league in scores conceded inside 50s, and your clearance work's been pretty good in generating scoring there. Not too bad at shutting that down up to get third. How will you sort of adapt your forward half work against Collingwood?
Yeah, we won't change too much, to be honest, and that's not taking anything away. Collingwood are defending very well. You look at the numbers over the last few weeks, there's commentary out there about their game at the moment, which I think is way off the mark. They're playing some good football. They're not scoring like a lot of teams are, but we've looked through a lot of their ball movement and the way they're going about their footy, and they're not far off. So from our point of view, we won't change too much. We'll go in and try to play the way we like to play and get the game on our terms. That's easier said than done, though. So we'll look at in-game adjusting that if we need to, but at this point there won't be a change so much to our forward line. We'll use some of the vision we've seen the last month or so, and maybe we might be able to manipulate a few things in our favour, but I'm sure they're looking at our game as well, and they might change a few things too.
You touched on the nets behind the goal, sort of a bit of pressure up the field, and someone accidentally squirts the ball into the crowd and it's out on the floor. You're expecting everyone to sort of run away from that area, create a bank of empty seats?
No, again, I'm not the expert on that, but I would have thought if you get the chance to sanitise your hands and so on, I'm no expert in that area, so I'm careful not to make too many comments around it.
Now, you think philosophically most people are pretty happy with what's going on, life continues normal, so to speak, but What do you say to those people who are saying how Collingwood and loved ones can't see each other and come to the stadium centre?
Yeah, and there are a lot of people. There are a lot of exemptions asked for and requested, and there's probably a lot more that go through that we don't know about. High profile. This one's a very high profile exemption that's come through, but I think when you look at the AFL industry, and we're doing everything we possibly can. We're doing our best to ensure we keep the community safe. We're open to, and we've been flexible right throughout the last year and a half about how we go about things. We've been regularly tested for COVID. There's always things you can do better as a group, and we've got a young group of people that are really doing their best to look after the community. We're lucky to be playing a game of football in our home state. And we look forward to that, and hopefully we put on a good show for our members and supporters in Adelaide, and then we'll bounce into next week and see where we end up next week.
Scott is now probably more forward than that kind of time where he's playing around the ball. Is he more forward now than being on the ball?
He'll do a bit of both, but at the moment with the mix we've got forward of the ball, he slots into that forward line a little more than what he had in the past. We had, playing Elliott, playing Billy down there at times, made that a little harder for him. At this point in time, we've gone with the three keys in Fogarty, Walker and Thilthorpe, and so that balance seems to work well for us at this point in time against some of the opposition we've played. Again, this weekend, there's a possibility he may play a little bit of a dual role again, depending on how the game's going. It's one thing that we've loved that he's been open to, is work on what he can do around the footy, because it brings another opportunity for him to play on our side.
Nick's it's an incredibly simplistic way to look at Collingwood, but the sort of chip around whole football style of play, can that be exploited, given that you know pretty well how they want to play every single week?
The danger with that is that when they do open you up, if your defence is off, we've shown that our Achilles heel is our defence this year. We're being scored on, more than we'd like. Today we went to work on that. Hopefully, if we bring that defence, there's an opportunity there for us. And we came into round one playing against a side that likes to own the ball and chip it sideways and move the ball around in Geelong. We came with a very direct game plan that week. We'll do the same this week, and if Collingwood are good enough, they'll take us on and challenge us. We've just got to get our defence right, otherwise they'll cut us open.
Saw the group come together, just a farewell. What's he meant to the group in the sort of couple of years that you've been in?
Yeah, well, I've 2 year and a half with Hassie. Outstanding character and highly respected by the group. So he just mentioned towards the end of training that it's probably his last hit out on the hallowed turf of Adelaide Oval. And for those who have been out there, it's a very special spot. So a couple of the boys got together, led by the boss of them all, Tex, and said, let's come in and we'll have a photo with staff and so on. Try to get the scoreboard in the background, but I'm not sure we nailed that. But Hassie's been fantastic for me in the short time that I've been here. It's important you have a person in that role that you can trust and that you can work closely with, and he's been outstanding in that space.
We've got Patrick Marnell in the mid-season draft last night. I think a couple of weeks ago you said you might look at small forward. Why didn't you go down the end of looking at small forward given the injury situation now?
Yeah, mid-season draft, we looked at it more from a medium, longer term point of view. We were looking at players right throughout, and I looked at a lot of those guys in detail that were there. We felt like Paddy was a standout for us on where we're going. He's played a bit of forward, mid and back, mainly back, and his last, all of this year's been down back. He brings something to our group that we want to add, which is that he's an elite ball user at this point, a young kid playing at a lower level, so he'll need to step up, and there's still some work to do there, which is why we're looking sort of medium to longer term. We don't expect him to slot straight into our side, but that's why we ended up going with Paddy over some others in the draft. We're really pleased to have picked him up. To be honest, we were a little bit worried there at times as other clubs start to talk, but he'll come over. Hopefully we can get him over as soon as possible, and maybe get him in this weekend, and he'll be a good one to watch. He's still got some developing to do. He's light, but they've got to catch him first. but a very good ball user and really exciting. So exciting time for the footy club.
Medium to long term imply that he'll have like an 18-month contract, or I don't really understand that side of the works.
Well, he didn't put down, I don't believe, an 18-month contract. But as a football club, we see him as a little bit more of a longer-term prospect for us. So the expectation on him to perform this year to get a contract next year is not necessarily there. But at the end of the year, we're always looking at, okay, from a footy club point of view, there's a ruthless part to it. How do we become the best footy club we can be? I've got a reasonably strong feeling he'll be here next year, but that decision won't be locked away until the end of the season.
Nixie, sorry. I currently said audio problem before when you explained 48 hours long quarantine. Can you just go through that again? And can you just confirm, can you tell the players today about that?
Good question, yes. So the players have been advised about that. That was this morning. They've got that in writing for us to go through. We'll obviously go through a lot more detail around that when we meet tomorrow. But yeah, post the game, my understanding at the moment is we're straight onto a bus from the Oval, and that takes away any risk of us in the car park running into anyone. We'll go back to a central location where obviously we're away from the public in our cars and then straight home. From that point, the only place we'll visit at all, it will be the football club for recovery on either the Sunday or the Monday. Otherwise, we'll be at home for that 48-hour period, or until we get advice that we can leave home, because we're also waiting on Collingwood post that for their test results to come through negative as well.
So does that players, coaches, and then match day staff, or how far does it spread? So, you know, people that have quarantine too?
Well, that's anyone who's involved in our match day on Saturday. So we will restrict the amount of people we have on match day. For example, we have some staff that work across both SANFL and AFL. Well, we'll do what we can to restrict that so that we've got less people in that AFL group. Of course, we have to run a game day though, so we'll have those people we need on the bench and so on.